I want to share with you guys a great perspective on how to look at challenges. Now, at the end of the day, challenges are always going to come into your life. Maybe that's stress at home, maybe that's stress at work, whatever the case may be, it's a challenge. But there's always going to be a different perspective on how you view it. And this is why I'm really blessed, to have went through this journey of just self-development, working on my mindsets, and different ways on how I become the best version of who I am today. And I'm constantly trying to grow. And at 30 years old, I wish I would have known this about challenges a lot sooner. I'm sure it could have helped me out, right? But at the end of the day, I'm blessed to know that, hey, this past weekend, it was epiphany. It was kind of like just a wake-up call where I just got to see things from a different perspective, a different lens. And my intentions for today in the episode is that you can also see challenges arise in your life from the same lens, a whole different perspective, a whole different mindset shift. So, before we get started about these challenges, I want you guys to think about different panels and different lines, right? You have a line going across the board, right? This is your horizontal line. And then up and down, this is your vertical line. Now, if let's say there's a challenge at, let's just say a relationship, okay? And let's just say, I'll actually use myself as a personal experience through this, right? So before I met my lovely wife, Allison, I went through many different heartbreaks, right? And at the end of the day, I'm blessed for all those heartbreaks because I got to go through those challenges, but I got to learn a lesson. And I think that's what all these challenges that everybody faces in life, it's just lessons, right? So hear me out. So it was like time after time after again, I would just continue to maybe attract a toxic relationship or whatever the case may be, just a bad relationship in general, And it was just like this snowball effect where it was one after another, one after another, one after another. Because I never worked on me, I never worked on myself until the last relationship before, I met Allison, my wife. It was the one that I had to go through a hard time. I had to go through this whole entire self-development journey and just, meditation and, self-help, like this whole entire, thing. But at the end of the day, it helped me grow. It helped me learn. And so the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because I want you to think about the lines I just shared with you, the horizontal and the vertical, because it's going to make a lot of sense. So let's just say I was over here, right? This horizontal line. First relationship, not good for me. And then still on that line, second relationship, not good for me. Third relationship, not good for me. Fourth relationship, not good for me. Because I'm constantly on this horizontal line. And sometimes when challenges, stress, adversity come into your life, and it seems like it just constantly comes back around, it's because you're not learning the lesson. It's because you're not growing vertically. Hear me out. So sometimes, right, when a challenges face us, we like to point the finger at other people and say, hey, it's whatever. You're the reason I'm in this challenge, or hey, this situation is because of this, or the economy, or the recession, or the government, politics, whatever, right? It's constantly pointing the finger at somebody else or some other thing, right? As to why that situation is like that stress, why that adversity. And then what happens? We might feel good in the short time frame because we're putting the blame, we're putting the problem on somebody else. And we're trying to just go over here. But guess what? It's a horizontal plane. That challenge, that stress, we didn't learn the lesson. And so what happens is it just follows us. And maybe it's a different area. Maybe it's a stress at work now instead of at home. Maybe it's a stress with the finances instead of stress with like an illness or a sickness. Maybe it's like your car breaking down or you lost your job, whatever the case may be. It's just that stress continues to follow us until we focus on the vertical growth. Now, hear me out. It's a lot easier to point the finger at somebody or something as to why our life and why we're dealing with this stress and whatever problems instead of accepting responsibilities for our own actions. And I had to learn this the hard way. But once again, the relationship before I met my wife, Allison, I mentioned I had to go through this self-development. I had to go through a very hard time in my life, very depressed. It was horrible. And at the end of the day, I had to go through that personally. I had to work on my mindset because, hey, I wasn't mentally strong. At the same time, I wasn't emotionally strong either. And I had to learn to overcome those skeletons in the closet, so to speak, those inner demons, those self-limiting beliefs, whatever it is that you want to call it. I had to learn how to overcome it. But the minute I did, guess what? I escaped that horizontal plane and I progressed vertically. Okay? Now hear me out. I'm sure you heard this. New levels, right? Acquire new devils. So true, right? So it's just like, hey, I grew vertically. I was able to level up mentally, emotionally. And then next thing you know, it's like, hey, there's another situation, another challenge. Maybe it's different than this horizontal plane that's over here because I grew vertically. I went up vertically, but still, it's still another challenge. Okay? So guess what? What is the lesson for me to learn during this challenge over here? I got to figure that out, right? And then once again, you progress, you progress, you progress. And the best way to progress is to face those challenges head on. And this is where you got to have some faith. This is where you got to have some trust. This is where you got to believe in, the God, a higher source, something that is going to say, what is the lesson to be learned here? Because there's always something behind the scenes that we don't see because we only see it through our own eyes, our own perspective. But remember, there's a lesson to always be learned here. And the reason why it's better to, accept those responsibilities instead of blaming others. Remember, every time you blame the situation on somebody or something, you're pointing the finger, which means there's 3 fingers pointing right back at you. So instead of you going ahead and doing so, what you need to do is just simply accept responsibilities and look at it from a different perspective. And this is why we always encourage our members at Heartletics is, hey, when challenges arise, don't respond, don't react. Instead, take a step back and observe. Take that, 1,000, skyline viewpoint, bird's eye perspective of the whole situation. What is the challenge that I have to learn? What is the lesson that I have to learn and overcome this so I can also grow vertically? And what happens is, one, you get through that situation a lot faster, right? Remember, I had to work on myself and, I grew vertically, work on myself, grew vertically, work on myself, grew vertically. As opposed if I was still stuck on this playing field of this horizontal line with the relationships that I was, putting myself into because I wasn't physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually working on myself. I wasn't filling up my cups and trying to level up. Instead, I was just running away from the situation. I was just, quote unquote, putting a Band-Aid on the gunshot wound. And so what does that do? Well, that doesn't help out anybody, right? Not even myself, because I would escape the situation, and then guess what? That challenge would arise again in that area, right? Or a different situation in my life. But regardless, I wasn't leveling up. Now, the reason why it's important to level up isn't so that way you can just overcome these challenges. It's because every time you rise up to the occasion, every time you grow vertically in life, guess what happens? You can help out others. And I feel like that is our sole purpose on life, right, is to help out others and go through life and looking at it is what is the lesson to be learned, right? How can I acquire more skills? How can I acquire more knowledge? How can I acquire more wisdom, right, and understanding? So that way, guess what? When somebody's stuck over here on this horizontal playing field and you are at the very top because you decided to grow vertically, you can then raise your hand and help them get there 10 times faster, right? And overcome the situation because guess what? You were able to face your challenges head on instead of just escaping the situation, running away from the challenge, and just pointing the finger at somebody or something instead of accepting responsibilities for your own actions. So it took me 30 years, right? And this past weekend, I don't know why, but, a little walk in the park, thinking all about gratitude, it just kind of hit me, right? And I feel like, man, if I would have known this, 20 or 15 or 10, 5 years ago, my life could probably be a lot different. But at the end of the day, hey, you have to go through these lessons. You have to learn, and everything is in its own good timing, own great timing, I should say. So hopefully this episode provided some inspiration and most importantly, some value for you. And my wish and my call to action for you is that the next time a challenge arises, once again, don't respond, don't react, take a step back and observe the situation. What is the lesson to be learned, and how can you grow vertically, rather than just pointing the finger at somebody or something, and not accepting responsibilities for your own actions? Because if you do that, you're running away, and that challenge is always going to chase you and find you again. So what can you do in the midst of that challenge to grow vertically, so that way you can learn all these different lessons as you progress through life and help out those in need as well? With that being said, this has been the Heartletics Podcast with Coach Joe, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace out, Girl Scouts.